Okay. Coming to you from KTC, where we have no water. It's always something exciting here. All right. First things first, distance learning for today. Here's what you need to take care of. Your distance learning assignment is to do the third quarter abstract. I'm also sending you a video I will send you a separate video with some notes that will help us kind of wrap up the nervous system so that next week we can do the activities. We need to finish up the little foam pieces activity, and then I have another mind over muscle activity which kind of compares how the nervous system and muscular system work together. I want to be ready to do that next week. So those are your designated assignments. Get the notes copied in your HBS course file. Get the third quarter abstract taken care of. So today in class, I wanted to talk a little bit about the AP Biology test, but then we got interrupted and everybody left. So here's what I wanted to say about the test. Okay, so yes, absolutely a difficult test, difficult subject. Grades across the board, we're definitely struggling and lower than what they're typical of being. So low grade on that test, that doesn't mean that that's the end all be all of that. So you have things that you can do. The two things that you can do immediately to take care of that grade is tomorrow you have the third quarter abstract, which is due. That is a test grade. So that will go into the same category as your AP Biology Unit 4 test. Let's say you got a 50 on the Unit 4 test, you get 100 on the abstract. And I'm just using this as an example. There is no guarantee for the 100 on the abstract. But then that would average out to a 75 for that category. So instead of having a 50 test average, you now have a 75 test average. That bumps you up 25 points in that category right there. And so that's going to help your overall grade. You have another additional item that you could use to your advantage. So because this has always been a test that students have struggled with, I believe there are 3 extra credit abstracts available. You can submit 1 extra credit abstract for the test category. So that means you could earn up to 10 points that would go directly into your test category. So that means if you got a 50 on the test, Unit 4 test, you do the abstract that's assigned, and you do the extra credit abstract. Well, the extra credit abstract, if you get all 10 points on that, that makes your 50 into, let's say, a 60. Then let's say, for example, if you get 100 on the abstract that's assigned, well, then that would then average your grade out in that category to an 80. So that's the immediate things you can do. The other things you can do is look across and make sure your homework average is as high as it can be. You can improve your homework average by making sure you have no zeros. You can also make corrections on things. You're welcome to do that as well. But the zeros are the things that are going to be bringing you down the most. There is a Mastering Biology extra credit assignment. I want to say that's Chapter 3. If you haven't already done that, you can do that as well. So there are plenty of things that are out there for you to take advantage of. But you have to do those things. For the abstract, you have to make sure that you are not plagiarizing. Plagiarism is taking somebody else's work and passing it off as your own. So if you copy information from the abstract, or if you copy information from the article and put it in your abstract, that's plagiarism. If you skip around in the article and pick bits and pieces to copy and put in your abstract, that is still plagiarism. If you take a sentence and you add synonyms, replace words, change around the sentence structure, that is still plagiarism. You cannot plagiarize. An abstract, what you're supposed to be doing is reading that article and writing it in your own words. Tell me what you read. Not writing in your own words. Take that back. I do not want you to write that article. I want you to read the article and tell me in your own words what you read. So I don't need any of that article repeated, because if I want to read it, I'd just go and read the original. You tell me what you read. So there's like 3 or 4 pages to that article. There's plenty of stuff on there. The mistakes people make are trying to plagiarized, and then you're trying to make an abstract, a page-and-a-half abstract out of the first page of the article. Read the whole stinking article. Yes, I know, everybody thinks that reading is torture. We got to get used to that anyway. So read the whole article. Hopefully within that article, there are 3 different areas where you find something that's relatively interesting. It's always easier to talk about things that are interesting. So find a few places that have something in there that you're willing to talk about, and that's what you do in your abstract. Yes, you can have 3 direct quotes. That means you copy it word for word from the abstract onto your article, or from the article onto your abstract, but it has to be in quotation marks, and you have to have in parentheses what page you got it from. You are limited to 3 sentences, so you can only do 3 sentences. You can do 3 sentences altogether. You can do 3 separate sentences. You could do 2 sentences and 1 sentence, or 1 sentence and 2 sentences. It doesn't matter, but you're limited to 3. Make sure that you go and open up that abstract rubric, and you go through that, and that you've done everything that it tells you to do in that abstract. Make sure you go back to your other abstracts, and if I have graded them and put comments on them, then look to see what comments I've made so you don't make those same mistakes on this one. But you've got to do that work. You've got to get that taken care of. The extra credit abstract goes by that same rubric, so make sure you do those same things. Those kind of things are going to help out your grade, but you've got to do those things in order for it to help out your grade. All right, so talking about the test specifically, let's look at the free response questions because that's the thing that everybody has trouble with anyway. All right, so compare the 4 types of macromolecules. And it kind of tells you got to do common characteristic and a differentiating characteristic. Yes, I 100% agree that you may not have been here the day that we did those in class, but I sent out notes on them. I 100% agree that you may not have that information available to you, but on the test, on Canvas, macromolecules was definitely one of the things that said that the test covered. So you have got to make sure that you take advantage of those opportunities and go and look and see what's on the test, and then you see macromolecules and you're like, well, I don't know what that is, then you have to make sure that you come and talk to me or contact me. At least send me an email or a text so that we can get that stuff taken care of. The biggest problem on that question was that when people compared, they said something along the lines of they all have different bonds. Well, that's not true, especially not the way that we talked about that. Every bond that is putting together the monomers into a polymer, it's the same bond in all of them. That's why we talked about the fact that it was always kicking out water. That's why we use those puzzle pieces to show that it was the dehydration, synthesis, condensation reaction, that it was the same thing that was putting them together each time. They have different names, yes, I agree. Those bonds definitely do have different names to them, but they are the same bond. So, I mean, you could have used that as your compare and contrast, but having a sentence that says the 4 macromolecules all have the same type of bond with different names, that's not your answer. That is the start of your answer. So, when you talk about they all have the same bond, then you tell what that bond is. Okay, so this is condensation reaction, dehydration, synthesis, and this is what happens. So we bond these 2 together, hydrogen, oxygen get kicked out, water molecule gets kicked out. Then the second part, but they have different names. Then what are those names? List what the names are. That is just one example of how you could have differentiated. You could have talked about monomers and polymers. A lot of students talked about the atoms that made them up, CHO, CHON, stuff like that. So yes, a lot of people also talked about their functions, and that was fine too. So there were plenty of ways that you could have compared and contrasted them. All right, next, calculate. This got a lot of people. Calculate means do the work, do the math. But you have to show, whoops, hang on. Okay, but with calculate, you have to show your work. Calculate doesn't mean give an answer. I mean, if you're calculating something, you're doing the math, and so that should have been on there. So this is okay. I mean, would have liked a little bit more, would have liked to put it in squares as well. This should have been written on the essay paper, however. Your reader is not going to see this part. So if all you wrote down on your answer sheet on the line paper was 1/16, then you didn't get full credit. You got a point for the correct answer, but you missed a point for the showing the calculation part, showing calculate. So when it says calculate, it has to be that stuff that has to be on there. For the next one, identify, justify. I mean, I took almost any answer that made sense. Justify, you have to explain how you got to that point. So show ratios, use Punnett squares, chi-squared analysis, anything like that would have worked. But that identify is definitely a one-word, one-sentence answer. Justify is not. Generally speaking, on free response questions, because they are essay-style questions, you need to always do a little writing and do a little explaining. Just assume that that's coming. All right, 17A, construct a phylogenetic tree. Most people did okay on that one. That one was okay. But some people just missed the determine part altogether. Like they didn't even do that part. And for the determine part, we talked about determine and put that in the back of our notebook. And so that would be, give the answer and then explain how you got to the answer. Use data from the question, use data from your analysis, and talk about that. So you could have gotten 1 point for a correct phylogenetic tree that matches the data. You could have gotten 1 point if you at least put an answer for a determine, the correct answer for determine, and then another point to do the determine part, what that word means, which is talk about how you got to that answer, and you have to do it correctly. And then finally, identify 2 types of evidence other than comparison of proteins that can be used to determine phylogeny of organisms. Of the 2, choose one and discuss. All right, so here's the thing. Yes, this is definitely one of the more difficult questions. But the notes for the chapters were pages 382 and 390, and then chapter 20, 395 to 406. So it says you need 2 types of evidence. I would have taken molecular homologies. That was on page 400. I would have taken shared ancestral characteristics. That was 402. I would have taken shared derived characteristics. That was also on 402. I would have taken vestigial structures. That was on 389, and it was a vocab term. I would have taken homoplasies. That was on 399, and it was a vocabulary term. I would have taken morphological homologies. That was on page 399. I would have taken homologous structures. That was on 389, and it was a vocab term. I would have taken convergent evolution. That was 390, and it was a vocab term. I would have even taken parsimony, if you could have talked about that. And that was page 405, and it was part of our little activity. So what is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So you had 9 that you could have used, and you only need 2 from that. Then of the 2, choose one and discuss. So discuss, when you discuss something with somebody, you sit down and you talk about it for a length of time. So that's not a one-word kind of answer. When you discuss the strength of that type of evidence, why is that going to be used? And that was just that would have been a little bit more in terms of the reading and vocabulary and applying that definition. So the stuff was there. Once again, we have to get used to these free response questions and making sure we get that stuff taken care of. As far as like your grade in class. So, homework, classwork, that's 30% of your grade. Your test category is 60% of your grade. Your AP Bio test is 10% of your final grade. So all 3 of these categories together make up 100%, which is what your final grade is. Now the problem with the AP Bio test is that, and I'm assuming right now that everybody's getting 100, I think everybody paid for that test and we're good to go. All you have to do is take it now. So I'm assuming that I'm going to put in 100 for that grade. That would give you like 10 points right there. Let's say that you have 100% average in your homework category. So that average times 30% gives you 30 points. 100 times 0.30 times 30% would give me 30 points. So then it depends on what your test category is. So if, let's say, I hit that the last time. Okay. So let's say that you got a 60 on that test. So 60 times 60%, and I got to do that math because I cannot do that in my head. That gives 36. So 30 plus 36 plus 10, so that would be a 60, a 76 would be your grade. But this grade is not in there yet, so our grade is based on these two categories. Since you only have one test grade in there, then that, yes, it is weighing on you heavily. So you have another test grade that's going to be in there on Saturday. So if you had a 60 on the Unit 4 test and you don't turn in that abstract, so that's a 0, now your average for the test grade is 30. That's still 60% of your final grade. So 30 times 60, 30 times 60%, that's 18. So 30 plus 18 plus 10, that's 40. Now your grade is a 58. But you got a 60 on the Unit 4 test. Let's say you get 100 on the abstract. Once again, I'm just assuming that you do it correctly. That's a 160. Now your test average is an 80. That is still 60% of your final grade. 80 times 60, that's 48. Now you're 70, 88. Now you're at an 88. Bump that up with the extra credit, bump this up with some extra credit, and that your grade will keep rising. But that's what you have to do those things in order to get that to help you out. All right, so distance learning for today, do the third quarter abstract. And here in just a little bit, I'm going to send out some notes to add to your HBS course file, so make sure you get those in. If you have any questions, make sure that you contact me.